Hey everybody, Michael Tracy here, doing a late night video because there is something that has irked me in the past couple hours. I made a video earlier today on the statements issued by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on the strikes carried out by Trump in Syria against Assad government targets. And I stated in that video that Bernie Sanders has not condemned the strike. Now, people were indignant and outraged that I made that statement because they insisted that Bernie Sanders had, in fact, condemned the strikes, or that I was nitpicking in inferring that no condemnation had been made. The fact is, go and read the statement for yourself. Read it objectively. The statement that Sanders issued, and that was later excerpted in the form of tweets, which people kept citing, but the tweets are simply excerpted from the formal statement that is made on the Sanders website, the official Senate website. There is no condemnation contained in that statement. Now, I'm sorry if that upsets people. I'm sorry if people want to rationalize and find some justification for the equivocal statement that Sanders issued, but the plain fact is that there is no condemnation in the statement. And let's just be clear, it's easy to condemn the airstrikes if you see fit. Let me give you an example. Senator Brian Schatz, Democrat from Hawaii. He said, quote, "The Assad regime's use of chemical weapons is abhorrent, but a military response is not the answer." That is a condemnation of the Trump missile strikes. That is an assertion that any kind of military retaliation in response to this purported use of chemical weapons is not something that Schatz supports. Therefore, he clearly and unambiguously stated his opposition to the strikes, and there's no way to parse it as meaning anything else. Likewise, Tulsi Gabbard, she didn't seem to have Sanders' problem, meaning doesn't seem to be toiling in ambiguity on this matter. Tulsi Gabbard said on Twitter, quote, so she issued very promptly a formal statement on the night of the strikes last night. But then again today on Twitter, she said, quote, "President Trump's missile attack on Syria is dangerous, rash, and unconstitutional." There's nothing equivocal about that. That is very easily understood. The words are clear. The meaning cannot be misinterpreted. Tulsi Gabbard is obviously opposed to the Trump strikes and has condemned them in very stark terms. Now, turning to Bernie Sanders, he issued this long statement. Well, not that long, but long enough that it kind of buried the lead. Now, the lead in a Bernie Sanders statement on how he feels about Trump's strikes in Syria is, does Bernie support this or does he oppose it? That's what people want to know when they're seeking out Bernie Sanders statements on the airstrike, right? Or I guess airstrike is not the correct term, missile strike, whatever. So Bernie goes on this long digression about Assad being a vicious dictator, and then he does say that he is deeply concerned that these strikes could lead to the United States once again being dragged into the quagmire of a long-term military engagement in the Middle East. That's good. I mean, you can support the airstrike on principle and still be concerned that it could have adverse consequences, right? So I could theoretically say I support Trump's airstrike, and I also want Trump to take steps to ensure that it doesn't degenerate into some kind of long-term quagmire. So that statement alone is not indicative of Sanders opposing the airstrike. It's indicative of him simply expressing his, quote, deep concern about the potential ramifications of the airstrike. So he is not stating principled opposition to the strike. I'm sorry, he's not. Read it for yourself. Read it in good faith And I don't see how you can come to any other conclusion. Here is who has come to the same conclusion as I have. 538. 538 has compiled a pretty useful resource in which they catalog where each senator has come down on the strikes. And here's how they characterize Sanders' position. They say that Sanders' position on the initial strikes is, quote, no clear position with reservations about next steps. Well, okay. If everybody has a reservation about the next steps, I mean, that doesn't signify anything in terms of whether you oppose the strikes or whether you condemn the strikes. Where, on the other hand, here's how 538 characterizes Schatz's position. Oppose. That's it. No oppose, but no vaguely worried about and expressing concerns related to. Just oppose, period. So that is not the position that you can discern from Sanders' statement. And I'm sorry if people are upset by that. I'm sorry if people don't want to know the truth. But as someone who tries to be as objective as possible, and Lord knows, I definitely have failings. But as somebody who is able to read the plain words of a politician's statement, there is no possible way that Sanders' statement can be construed as a condemnation or statement of opposition to the strikes. That's just true. You might not like it, but you not liking it doesn't detract from its truth value. Okay? So that's what I have to say about that for now. I will link to the 538 resource on the description box. Look at it for yourself. Read the Sanders statement again. Read it twice. Read it 3 times. You're not going to find a statement of opposition in it. So just wanted to do a follow-up video because there were so many trolls that were waging an offensive against me as a result of the last video. I supported Bernie Sanders in the primary. I have a generally favorable view of Bernie Sanders. I think he's made some extremely worthwhile contributions to American politics. That does not mean that I'm going to work myself into some kind of mental gymnastics game to try to find statements where he didn't make them. The fact is, Bernie Sanders has always been somewhat equivocal on foreign policy matters, and that was one of his weak points during the 2016 campaign. He had some bright spots in his criticisms of Hillary, but overall it definitely was not a point of emphasis for him, and it was not something that he seemed to want to comment full-throatedly on. So, there you have it. I hope that satisfies the haters out there. I know it's incredible and discrediting of me for expecting that one of the main left-wing leaders in the country, if not the most prominent left-wing leader in the country, would come out against an unprovoked attack on basically false pretenses against a sovereign state, but that's where we are. But Tulsi Gabbard and Brian Schatz and some others, including Rand Paul, they demonstrate that it is very much possible to articulate in clear and unambiguous terms that one opposes these strikes on principle, not out of some procedural qualm and not out of some belief that the strikes just need to be articulated better. The rationale behind the strikes just need to be articulated more robustly to the American people, which is what a lot of senators are saying at present. So that'll do it for now. Despite my slight annoyance as to the reaction to the previous video, I nevertheless welcome further reactions. And that'll do it. Have a great night.